What we're looking at is individual household dumping, mom and pop dumping, I guess you could call it. Problem is that type of trash and garbage now contains a lot of chemicals which are potentially hazardous to human health when they get in the groundwater and into people's water supply.
These natural conduits are a type of plumbing network. You might as well have pipes underneath the ground taking the contaminants directly to some place.
One morning, I came out and brought my little coffee pot out to get my usual water, and lo and behold, I pumped out a coffee pot full of oil.
One little piece of advice to people concerning sinkholes is not to put anything in a sinkhole that you wouldn't want in your drinking water.
Before this country even was a country, even before there were people, natural forces were at work in what would one day be the Commonwealth of Virginia, building up and cutting into a landscape that would come to be called the Valley and Ridge Province, a great stretch of the state reaching from its northern border through all or part of 24 counties to where the state touches tips with Tennessee. Those millions of years of erosional work upon the land have created a special kind of landscape known as karst topography that has brought to western Virginia a spectacular beauty both above and below its surface. Ed Spencer teaches geology in the heart of the region at Washington and Lee University in Lexington.
The landforms that you see in this type of topography are things like sinkholes and places where, for example, the streams are diverted underground, and these are called sinking creeks. And in a few places, this leads to the development of tunnels that are where the streams have been diverted underground, and occasionally, very rarely, a natural bridge such as the one here in Virginia, which is so famous.
Spencer knows that while the natural bridge formed by Cedar Creek is spectacular, it is not the area's solitary example of karst.
This small stream that you see here is called the Lost River. It's a tributary from here on down about 50 yards into Cedar Creek. But as you look back at the source of it, you can see that this stream is issuing from solid bedrock right behind me.
In the Valley and Ridge of Virginia, the Lost River is just one example that we can see of the maze of fractures and fault zones and cavities that provide conduits for the flow of water and other material within the ground. Virginia Mineral Resources geologist Dave Hubbard is an expert on karst.
One of the inherent problems in karst terrains is that anything that is in water or a liquid that is on the surface of the land or in a sinkhole can enter the groundwater without being filtered or diluted. It can enter right on into the groundwater and into an enlarged fracture or cave passage.
Ernst Kasting would agree. Kasting teaches geology at Radford University, but on this clear and crisp Saturday, he is offering a troop of Boy Scouts a hands-on lesson in karst topography. Kasting has brought these boys to a sinkhole in Pulaski County to try to clean up the tons of trash that have been dumped there. Kasting has great interest in cleaning up the site.
This is the back entrance to the longest cave in Pulaski County, known as James Cave. It was formerly open, and it hasn't been open for something like 15 to 20 years. It's been plugged by trash. One of the efforts here is to open that, to restore it to its natural condition. The cave had a natural opening, which is what geology intended to be there. This cave is about 7,300 feet in length, so it's over a mile in total length.
What that means is that the trash and garbage dumped into the sinkhole here can be a problem somewhere else.
These natural conduits are a type of plumbing network. You might as well have pipes underneath the ground taking the contaminants directly to some place, because the time of travel of the contaminants is very short.
There is a lot of undesirable stuff being dumped into a lot of sinkholes up and down the Valley and Ridge province of Virginia. Dennis Slifer can tell you that. He's studied the problem of illegal dumps for years. With the help of pilot Lanier France, Slifer took to the air to survey illegal dumps in Baratat County. From that vantage point, he identified 168 dumps just in that single county. Dumps he then visited on the ground to determine their potential contamination threat to the county's groundwater. From that survey, and a similar one in neighboring Rockbridge County, Slifer has reached some startling conclusions about the extent of illegal dumps in Virginia's Valley and Ridge province.
And we estimate that there may be as many as 6,000 illegal dumps in the 24-county area. Perhaps 4,000 of those are in karst areas, and perhaps 2,400 of those dumps are in sinkholes. So we're talking about a pretty serious, potentially serious problem.
Even if the dump is not in a sinkhole, it can still cause problems.
Surface water infiltrates through the pile of trash and generates what we call leachate, which is a chemical stew, really. It's kind of a witch's brew of chemicals and contaminants of all types that would be leached out of the contents of this dump.
And what is in this witch's brew? Check your garage or basement and you'll probably get a pretty good idea.
What we're looking at is individual household dumping, mom and pop dumping, I guess you could call it. Problem is that type of trash and garbage now contains a lot of chemicals which are potentially hazardous to human health when they get in the groundwater and into people's water supply. Looking at some of the contents of this dump, these all are examples of household hazardous waste. This is a spray paint can, which I'm sure still has some paint in it. This is silicone tire shine. Hydrocide is a water repellent. This on the back says it's poisonous and you should avoid getting it on your skin and breathing the vapors. Of course, none of this stuff would do you any good if it was in your drinking water. Here's a paint can. Paint, often, the older paints especially, contain lead, high levels of lead. This looks like, no, that's a vegetable can. This is hydraulic oil. Oil cans. All of these things are never truly empty. When they're thrown out, they always have a small residue of oil. And it doesn't take very much oil to contaminate a lot of groundwater. Just a few ounces of oil can contaminate thousands of gallons of drinking water when it's in the aquifer of the groundwater system.
So what? So what if a little oil gets into the groundwater? Don't ask Andrew Manzano, so what? Mr. Manzano used to get water for his store from a pump at the back of the property. Used to.
And this well was dug sometime from 1775 to early 1800s. And up until 8 years ago, the water was good. We had it tested, and I was making coffee with it. One morning, I came out and brought my little coffee pot out to get my usual water, and lo and behold, I pumped out a coffee pot full of oil.
The contaminant was oil, and Mr. Manzano has no doubt as to its source far away.
The only place this comes from is from the service stations that are about a mile from here. And I myself have been at one of these service stations when somebody pumped a tank of diesel fuel into a gasoline car. And when they realized their mistake, the car was pulled to the side of the service station, a mechanic was called, and they drained the tank right there. No buckets, no containers, no nothing. Just let it spill on the ground.
Now Mr. Manzano marks his pump with a skull and crossbones. In pointed reference to the worth of that water, the skull is smiling.
That's because death will be happy to receive you.
Pat Stewart can tell you about karst landscapes too. His education began when he bought this house in the summer of 1987.
Water started turning color, a grayish color, and awful smell. Called the health department. They come down and checked, and he pointed to this upper house, and He said, let's go up there and put red dye in the commode and flush it. Then turn water on and see if this upper system is coming into the well.
It took just 35 minutes for that dye to show up in Mr. Stewart's well water.
So I called the health department man back and told him, he said, well, don't use water. That a direct line underground was siphoning right straight into the well. The well's 475 feet deep and 95 feet of casing. This upper septic system is approximately 130, 140 feet away from the well. But he said the limestone could be a direct chute right into it. So
Whether from a neighboring home, from a service station a mile up the road, or from a sinkhole dump, groundwater contamination is posing an increasing threat in the valley and ridge. With 90% of rural homeowners relying on wells or springs for their water, there is much at stake when the purity of our groundwater is threatened. Dennis Slifer.
I think can be solved. I don't want to be a total pessimist about it, but it's going to take significant efforts in education and enforcement. There are a number of state laws that prohibit illegal dumping. The problem is one of enforcement. The state obviously has limited resources in enforcing every little hollow and every little sinkhole in the state. Until local governments, county governments, take a serious interest and get involved in this, there can't be any real effective enforcement.
Some counties have indeed begun taking steps to ensure the quality of their groundwater. Botetourt County has an ordinance against illegal dumps. Botetourt County planner and zoning administrator Ron Hashey.
And it basically says that there are no private landfills that are legal in the county. And the only legal landfill is the Botetourt County landfill.
But Botetourt is a big county for law enforcement officials to cover if they're trying to track down illegal dumps. That's why Botetourt has gone one step beyond just putting another law into its books. You don't have to be a law enforcement officer in the county to fight illegal dumps.
There is room for citizens to come in and, lodge a complaint, and the sheriff's department will deal with it on a on-call basis, basically.
And that ultimately is where the responsibility of protecting our groundwater lies, with each citizen. Reporting illegal dumps is just one action citizens can take, and the main law you need to know is just the law of common sense.
20 or 30 or 40 years ago, people's trash was relatively benign. Biological contaminants were probably the only real threat to water supplies. Now we have thousands of chemicals that we use in our homes and farms. There needs to be some consciousness raising about waste disposal and about impacts to water quality. Both groundwater and surface water is impacted by illegal dumping like this.
People don't realize that whatever goes onto the surface works its way underground. And especially here, we have lots of underground streams because we're in a limestone formation, and it works its ways. This is why we have sinkholes, and etc. And people don't realize how precious water is, and they dump whatever into the sinkhole.
The bottom line, as pointed out by Virginia Mineral Resources geologist Dave Hubbard, is that what goes into the ground goes into the water.
Any water or liquid pollutant entering a sinkhole migrates down into the water table with very little filtering, if any at all. So that if you put something in the sinkhole as a waste, it may well end up in your drinking water. One little piece of advice to people concerning sinkholes is not to put anything in a sinkhole that you wouldn't want in your drinking water.